Hi y'all, welcome back. Today I am going to can some chicken. I'm only going to do 4 pounds, so that's only going to make like 4 pints. And what we want to do is just cut them into cubes. And you want to remove some of the fat. I don't worry about getting all of the fat off because I do like a little bit of the taste. And as long as I don't leave too much on there, it won't interfere with the seal. But because this is going to be such a small batch, it's only going to be 4 pints, maybe 5. It should just be 4 though. I'm going to just do it in the Nesco Smart Canner. And so I figured I'd go ahead and bring you along. And so all we do is just cube the chicken, just smaller pieces. It doesn't have to be precise. I kind of like the bite-sized pieces. And also if I want to shred it, then when I open the jar and I just stick a fork in there and just swirl it around, it will shred these. These are small enough that just a fork inside the jar will shred them. So that's why I like to use those sizes. And this is basically all we do. Chicken is one of the easiest things there is to can. So what we're doing here, this is the majority of the work right here, is just cutting them up. Because then after this, we just pack them in the jars. And we pressure can them. There's nothing more to it. So definitely one of the easiest things. You do need a pressure canner though. Alright, so I will continue to do this to all the chicken, and then I will be right back with you. Alright y'all, well my chicken has been cut, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to put them in jars. I shouldn't need more than like 4 jars, I think, because normally I get a pound per jar. My hands have been washed. The jars have also been washed. My lids have been washed. So everything has been washed. So I'm putting the meat in there. Now I am not one that likes to touch raw meat. So even though chicken is so easy to do and so convenient, I just don't like the feeling. So you want to pack these in there pretty good. And normally I have a scale so that I can know how much I've actually put in there. That's not necessary at all. It's just something that I like to know how much chicken I have per jar. So normally I just put my scale and then I'll zero it out with a jar, which weighs 10 ounces, just like that. And I put that on there. And so Okay, it didn't zero out correctly. Okay. So it's telling me I have almost 14 ounces, which tells me I can fit more in there, but I'm gonna stop. Like I said, I normally try to get a pound in there, and I normally get about 15.5 ounces, something like that. But they have changed the guidelines too, to where before you filled up to the 1-inch headspace. Now you're supposed to do 1.25 inches, and I'm not sure why they did that. So that looks about right. And so 13.5 ounces. Then I'm gonna just go ahead and do it the way I normally do it and not switch things up. And I guess it's because I like having things even, so I know if I'm doing what I'm doing, you know. So like this one is 14.4. So that's a big difference, isn't it? Oh, because I left the lid on. I left the funnel on there. So that's 11 ounces. That's 13.5. Yeah, so I had left the funnel on there, so that made it. And you don't really need the funnel for the chicken. I just happen to, I like canning like in a certain way, doing it the same, kind of like every time, so that I don't make mistakes or leave something out, you know. So it looks like I'm not even gonna have enough for a 4th jar. So that's only 7.5 ounces. I hate to run just the 3 jars. I really would want a 4th jar. So let me think for a minute and see what I'm going to do about that. Okay, y'all. So what I did was I went ahead and cut up some sweet potato. And so I made up the room. I added some sweet potato and I added some onion. And so to this, I don't have to, but I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, I can't find the quarter, so I'm going to go ahead, the half, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2/4. So a half a teaspoon of salt. Let's move the scale out of the way. And then, so I have the 3 jars of chicken, which is what y'all came to watch, was the canning of the chicken. So as far as the chicken goes, that is done, right? So I have my chicken packed in there. I left 1/4 inch and a quarter headspace, and I put my half a teaspoon of salt. Now I'm going to I've got paper towel with vinegar, and I'm just going around just to make sure that there is no grease or no sliminess or little grains of salt or anything like that on the rim, which can interfere with the sealing. So I just want to make sure that that's nice and clean. and I do it a second time. That's not necessary. And I don't always do that, but I felt like I needed to then. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to this one. Except for this one, I'm probably going to have to do it again because the chicken, I can just like that. It doesn't need any liquid. You can add liquid to 1.25 inch space, head space, if you want to add the liquid to it. I don't add the liquid because the chicken is going to make its own broth. So I need my rings, and I will get rings for that in just a second. Now for this, I'm going to put broth in it. Actually, not broth, but I got some water right here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour that in there. And to the actual chicken, this, I don't have to debubble or anything because I didn't add any liquid. You know, there's no liquid in it. It's just the chicken. Now, because this is the chicken, the sweet potato, and the onion, I do have to debubble. And I want to make sure, see, that the bubbling took the water down, so I need more water in there. And guys, this is really easy. Like this one right here, I didn't want to put it in just half full, so I went ahead and added the liquid. But if we were just doing the chicken, you see how easy it is. I cut up the chicken, I packed the chicken in there, I put a teaspoon of salt, excuse me, a half a teaspoon of salt for pints, a teaspoon if I was doing quarts. I wiped the rim with vinegar, and I'm going to go ahead and wipe that rim again just because I've been messing with the water and there is a possibility that there is some salt there. Alright, so it's wiped. I go ahead and I grab another lid. I've got bunches of lids in there because this is one canning project. I'm fixing to can up, I believe it's like 20 pounds of ground beef. So that's why I've got all these jars. I'm doing 20 pounds of ground beef, and then I'm doing some, I think it's ground turkey, and I may not get to it all today. And then I think some juice. But I have that. Let me go ahead and get my rings, which I normally have everything set out, but I guess I just didn't think of my rings. And so then when you put the rings on, I felt resistance, and then just a little bit more. And you see, I just did the fingers. I didn't apply my whole hand or anything. That's all it needs. And once you do it a few times, you get used to it. All right, so that's it for that. And now we're going to do this in the Nesco canner. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of move this out of the way just so that I can put the canner right here so that you can see. I was trying to do the whole process on here for you so that you could see the whole thing. I'm going to plug the canner in. Alright, so I got the canner plugged in there. And so this canner calls for 8 cups of water. So that's 2 quarts. I'm trying to get it because I have to move it once I close the lid. All right, so it tells you though, this canner, like in the other canner, you know, you put your water in first on the stove top. Well, this one wants you to put your jars in first. So I'm putting in my jars. Inside, let me show you that. Just, I have the canning rack. Have the canning rack inside. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put the 4 jars in. And I haven't done pints in this before, so I'm just going to see. All right, I have 4 pints in there, but it will hold 5, and I'm using wide mouth. So that's good to know. Because sometimes it says, it might say 5 and it might be for the regulars, but this one will go with 5. So we have that in there, and so it calls for the 2 quarts of water. So I'm going to go ahead and get 2 quarts of water in there. Calls for hot water, so I'm letting the water run for just a minute. And if I was going to pressure can these on the stove, on the stovetop canner, I would not have my water boiling either. It would just be, I would be going with room temperature water because I'm dealing with room temperature stuff. You know, I'm not cooking. Everything's raw. I don't have anything cooked. Now, if it was cooked, then I'd have to have my canner heating up with the recommended amount of water in there because you don't want to put hot jars into a cold canner. You don't want to put cold jars into a hot canner either. So, but this one calls for just the 8 cups, so 2 quarts of water. My stovetop canner calls for 3 quarts of water. So I went ahead, I put the 2 quarts of water in there. I'm going to dry my hands. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the lid down, secure it. It has an arrow which tells you which way to open. So I'm going to turn it that way. And that's closed. The little vent on the top, the little dial, I'm going to make sure it's on exhaust. And I'll try to add a picture on there just so that you know what it looks like. And so it's sealed. My dial is on exhaust. Then I'm going to come down here and I am going to hit high. I'm doing pints of chicken, so it's going to call for 75 minutes. If I was doing quarts, it would be 90, but pints is only 75. So I hit high first, then I hit to 75, which is the required amount of time for what I have going on in the canner, and then I'm going to hit start. And it'll do that till it gets to where it needs to be, and then it will turn to E10, which is when it will start venting, and then it will vent, for E for exhaust, so it'll exhaust for 10 minutes. And then this will come back down to E0, which means that it's done exhausting for its 10 minutes. And then I will turn the dial to airtight. And then at that point, it'll start doing this again, and it'll get up to the pressure that it needs to be at. And then once it gets to the temperature that it needs to be at, it will start counting down from 90 till it gets done. When it gets done, I will unplug it. I will leave it alone. I will just unplug it, leave it alone for 1 to 2 hours. Then I will come and I will open the lid and I will take my jars out. I will set my jars wherever I'm going to leave them for the next 24 hours. I'll leave them there undisturbed. Once that's done, I will go ahead and I will remove the rings off my jars, and I will wash them. I always like to wash them just to make sure there's no residue or anything on them. But when I store, I was trying to see if I had a jar. So when you store your jars like this. There's no ring. You remove the ring, because if you leave the ring on and this happens to come unsealed for whatever reason, or it just never was really sealed in the first place and it was just a forced false seal and it came loose over time, well, if you have the ring on there tight, it's just going to keep it on there and you're going to think you have good food, but you don't. So you want to remove the ring and you just store it just like this, just the flat on the jar, and it's sealed and it's good. So just thought I'd let you know that, because I see a lot of people that take pictures and post online and they leave that on there. And they may be new canners, but this way, if your food has a bad seal, if your jar has a bad seal and the food starts going bad, those gases are going to push up the lid, and the air is going to get in there and it's going to get moldy, and you're going to be able to see it, as opposed to just thinking you have good food and in all reality you don't. So you see it's still going around in circle, and it does that for about a good while, for like 20 minutes give or take, but then it'll go ahead and start its exhaust. All right, guys, we'll see you back in a little bit. All right, y'all, well, y'all see the E2 right here, E2, that means it has 2 more minutes of exhaust, and then it'll be ready for me to switch it to the airtight. So there's E1, E1. So we got 1 more minute, and then we'll be able to switch it to airtight. I just wanted to bring you back and show you that. I'm going to go ahead and let it get there and get it down to E0 when it'll beep, and I'll go ahead and turn it and show you what it does then. So we're going to go ahead and wait this 1 minute. Hope you don't mind. Kind of want to let you see the changes. When you're waiting for that 1 minute, sure does seem like an awfully long time, doesn't it? All right. So you heard the beep. That's all it does. That's all it beeps. So normally when it goes to E10, I normally set myself a timer, like on my watch or on my phone, so that I can actually hear it. Because if I'm in another part of the house, that little beep right there, I'm not going to hear that. So it's E0. And so now I come over here, and I normally go ahead and put this on just because if the water splashes, it's really hot. I don't want it to get on me. And I turned it to airtight. And you heard how quiet it got, right? Now it's airtight. And so it's no longer venting. And so it'll go ahead and stay at this E0, and then it'll start that little chase thing that it does around, like going like that and around. It'll go to that soon. And then from that, it will go to, I think it's just registering this now. But when it starts the little chase, it will be, because it is building up pressure at that point, and we'll just go around in circles till it gets to the pressure it needs to be at, and then it'll go to 675, and it's when it starts counting down its actual canning time. And I don't remember exactly how long it takes from this E0 to where it actually starts doing its little chase around. So I'm going to give it another minute or so with you, and if it doesn't do it, then I'm not going to wait for it, because I've got other things that I need to be doing. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it there and see, and I'll be back in a minute, approximately a minute. Okay, so there you see it. It started going around. So it'll go ahead and do this for a while. It's going to do this. You know, now it's airtight. So now it's starting to build its pressure. So it's going to do that till it gets to its pressure. Once it gets to the pressure, for me, it's 15 psi. So once it gets to that, then this will turn to 75 and it'll start counting down. And I'm not going to keep you along for that. Just know that it'll do this till it gets to its time, and then from that time, whatever time you have it set to, then it'll start counting down. But I won't keep you around for that. Alright guys, I missed the beep because I wasn't going to wait around for it, but it's already there. It's only been like a couple of minutes since I had you on here. And so that right there, that little bit of sensing it's doing, it's not really, it's letting out the extra. This is like if you were on the stove top, you know, every time it's like it jiggles, letting out some of that pressure. That's what this is. So this is perfectly normal. So these houses don't think that it's not airtight or that it's doing something wrong. Alright guys, you see, we're down to 1 minute. Got one, oh, there we go. It's beeping. It's off. That's all the beeping it does. So you may have to set a timer if you're not going to be in the same room or, you know, busy doing other things. So it says it's off now. So all I'm going to do is I am going to unplug it. I unplugged it, and so it's off now. There's no power to it. And you can hear where it's starting to quiet down. It still has a little bit of steam. And you can hear the jars. If you listen good, you can hear the jars. And they're moving around. So I'll bring you back when I take them out in a couple hours. Alright y'all, it's been a couple of hours. I'm going to go ahead and twist it to the left, which is open. I'm going to go ahead and open it. Yep, see the steam that came out? I just want to be away from it so that steam doesn't get to my face. There they are. And I'm going to get the jar lifter. I'll be right back. Alright, so I've moved them. They're going to be here for the next 24 hours, and then I'll remove the rings and I will wash them and put them away. But I just want also to show you, you see the liquid? We put the chicken in with no liquid. It made its own liquid because it was raw. That's all nice chicken broth. Now, the other one that we put the liquid in because we had to, because we put the sweet potato and the onions in there. Look at that. You figure it's been sitting there for 2 hours and you can still see bubbles. That's how hot it is in there still. Alright, that's it. 3 pints of chicken and then a pint of, I'm going to go with a soup starter.